Welcome to another Telltale Books video. Quite a while ago, I promised that I was going to do a deep dive into everything I can get my hands on by Clark Ashton Smith. There's a lot that I haven't got my hands on yet, but I do have a book that'll start me off. It is The Miscellaneous Writings of Clark Ashton Smith, It was published by Nightshade Books. I believe it's still available. If not the hardcover like this, you can still get the trade paperback from Nightshade Books and all of the rest of their fantasies of Clark Ashton Smith's series is still on their website as trade paperbacks. So you can get them as ebooks too. The hardcovers, you got to look in the used market and pay a lot of money for them. Very good books though. Cool illustrations. I love these books. They did an excellent job. And this book has the very first story published by Clark Ashton Smith called The Malay Krise. Not quite sure how you pronounce that. At any rate, it is considered his very first story from October of 1910. Oh, and it has an alternate title where the Malay Krise is normally spelled Krise, but there's an alternate title where it's spelled Creese. So I think Krise is the correct pronunciation. Anyway, it's just a short story. It was originally published in the Overland Monthly in October of 1910. So this was his first publication. The story is very short, really more of a flash fiction. And it's about two men. One man is relating the story about a knife that he holds in his possession. And he relates how he came to come into possession of the knife, which includes a story of how this knife was owned by a sahib who was fighting against the British for the independence of his people. The story is not a fantasy story. It's more like Kipling, I think. I think Kipling was one of Smith's influences, and it's more the kind of thing Kipling might have written at that time. And it's pretty good, but it's definitely not a mature work by Clark Ashton Smith, as you can guess. I mean, this was 1910. When was Smith born? 1893. He was 17 years old at the time. Most people would not be writing mature works yet at that age. There are exceptions, but I don't think in Clark Ashton Smith's case that he was at that level yet. So it's a very short story, so you don't really get deep into character. There isn't really any world building. It's not a fantasy, but it is good writing. Not great writing, but it is good. But if you're familiar with Clark Ashton Smith and you know his mature style, then I can promise you this doesn't show that yet. He has yet to develop the typical Clark Ashton Smith style, aside from maybe the fact that it does involve an Arabic story. I think there's a lot of Orientalism and a lot of Middle East type themes that come into his stories, especially since some of his stories were published in the Oriental story pulp magazines of the 1930s. The final assessment then is that this is a youthful amateur work, and I don't think anybody but a Smith completist is really going to have much interest in this story. It's very short, not fantasy, not Clark Ashton Smith's mature style. doesn't have a whole lot to offer, except to the person like me who wants to investigate everything that Clark Ashton Smith did and see how he grew from his beginnings. This is his beginnings. Now we're going to see how he grew coming up in the rest of what I dig into with Clark Ashton Smith. So have you read the Malay Krise? Are you familiar with this story? Leave comments about Clark Ashton Smith. Like, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and come on back for a lot more Clark Ashton Smith and a lot of other authors that I'm digging into. I'm going to be here doing them.